Welcome to Lyra Echo Stories, where every story echoes emotions, memories, and hidden truths. Step in and feel the echo of every tale.
There's a photograph I took when I was 11 years old. It's a picture of an empty refrigerator, just the light bulb glowing, 3 bare shelves, and a single ketchup packet from a fast food restaurant I'd walked to 6 blocks away. I took that photo on day 9. There were 21 days left to go. My mother was in Paris. She was eating croissants, posting selfies in front of the Eiffel Tower, and falling in love with a man who knew I existed and didn't care. She left me $20, a debit card with no PIN, and a sentence I can still hear in my sleep. "You're old enough. Don't be dramatic." I was 11. What happened after she came back, tanned, smiling, rolling 2 designer suitcases through the front door, ended with a CPS officer at our kitchen table and a judge's signature on a custody order. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I go on, if this story speaks to something real in your life, take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always read them. My name is Elise. I'm 24 now. Let me take you back to a Tuesday in June, the day my mother handed me a $20 bill and walked out the door for 31 days. But first, before I take you back to that summer, you need to understand something. By the time I was 24, I had built a life that didn't include Janine Holt. Not because I hated her, because I finally had air to breathe. I worked as an administrative assistant at a pediatric clinic on the east side of town. Small office, good people, decent insurance. I lived in a studio apartment with a window that faced a parking lot, which sounds depressing until you've spent a month in a house where the power got cut and the only light came from birthday candles. A parking lot with a working street lamp? That's luxury. My mornings were simple. Coffee, toast, bus to work. I answered phones, filed charts, scheduled appointments for kids who had parents that actually showed up. There's an irony there I didn't appreciate at first. It was a Thursday in October when everything cracked open again. I walked out of the clinic at 5:15, keys in hand, already thinking about the leftover pasta in my fridge. And then I saw her. A woman standing next to my car in the parking lot. Thinner than I remembered. Hair dyed a shade of blonde that didn't quite match her roots. Clothes that looked like they used to be nice. Maybe 2, 3 years ago. It took me a full 4 seconds to recognize my own mother. She smiled. That smile. The one that always meant she needed something. "Hi, baby. You look so grown up." I stopped walking. 3 meters between us. My keys bit into my palm because my hand was shaking and I hadn't noticed until right then. She tilted her head, softened her voice, a move I'd seen 1,000 times. "I wouldn't come all this way if it wasn't important, Elise. You know that." I didn't know that. What I knew was that the last time this woman stood near me, I weighed 67 pounds and a judge had to intervene. But she wasn't done talking. Her second sentence told me everything. "I need your help with something. It won't take long." 13 years of silence, and she opened with a favor. I should have gotten in my car and driven away. I know that now. But there's a thing that happens when you grow up invisible. When someone finally looks at you, even the wrong someone, your body freezes before your brain catches up. I didn't invite her to my apartment. That much I managed. We walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks from the clinic. I ordered black coffee. She ordered a vanilla latte with oat milk and extra foam, then smiled at the barista like they were old friends. She started with small talk. My job, my apartment. "Oh, you look so healthy, so pretty." Compliments that arrived 13 years too late, wrapped in a voice that hadn't earned the right to deliver them. I waited. It didn't take long. Janine was applying for a position at an assisted living facility. Something in patient care. The background check had flagged her. A record in the state central registry. Child neglect, substantiated. Her file. My name. She couldn't get hired. She leaned forward. Lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret instead of asking me to erase one. "All I need is for you to write a letter. Just say the situation was exaggerated, that you were fine. Then sign the expungement request. It's a simple form, Elise. She stirred her latte, eyes steady, waiting. And then she said the thing. You owe me, Elise. I gave you a roof over your head for 11 years. I made mistakes, fine. But you're not the only one who suffered. I stared at the foam swirling in her cup. And for a moment I wasn't 24 anymore. I was 11. Standing in front of an open refrigerator with nothing inside but a light bulb and a ketchup packet. The smell of a house that no one had lived in properly for weeks. She said, mistakes, the way someone says, traffic. Like it was just something that happened to her. I left the coffee shop without answering her. Didn't explain, didn't argue. Just stood up, dropped $4 on the table for my coffee, and walked out. I could feel her staring at my back through the window as I crossed the parking lot. But I didn't turn around. I drove home. Sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet. Stayed there for maybe 20 minutes, just breathing. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Under the tax folders and the apartment lease, there was a notebook. Floral cover, faded pink and yellow, the spine cracked in 3 places. I hadn't touched it in years. Next to it, a USB drive the size of my thumb, tucked inside a sandwich bag. I picked up the journal, opened it to the first page. The handwriting was small. Pencil. The letters tilted slightly to the right the way a child's hand does when she's pressing too hard because she's trying not to shake. Day 1. Mom left. $20. I read that line 3 times. Janine wanted me to say the truth was exaggerated. She wanted me to write a letter telling the state of Ohio that a 31-day absence and $20 was a misunderstanding. So let me tell you the truth, day by day. Exactly as I wrote it. This journal saved my life, and it destroyed hers. But before I take you back to that June, you need to understand why I didn't call anyone. Why a girl who could write in a journal every night and walk 6 blocks to a dollar store couldn't pick up a phone and ask for help. The answer is simple. And it's the worst part of the whole story. I was more afraid of being rescued than being hungry. My mother made sure of that. To understand Janine, you have to picture her the way everyone else saw her. Pretty. Put together. Always the first to laugh at a dinner table. She had this talent for walking into a room and making everyone feel like they'd been waiting for her. At parent-teacher conferences, the rare ones she attended, teachers loved her. Your mom is so sweet, they'd say. I'd smile. Sure. Sweet. At home, Janine was a different frequency. Not loud, not violent. Just absent. Like she was always mentally standing in another room, looking at a version of her life that didn't include me. She told people she was a single mom. She told them she sacrificed everything. And if you only saw the outside, you'd believe it. She worked at a real estate office answering phones. Came home tired. Reheated whatever was cheapest. That part was real. Being a single parent is brutal, and I won't pretend it isn't. But here's what the outside never saw. When I was 8, I got a fever that lasted 4 days. Janine had a friend's birthday party on day 2. She left a pot of soup on the stove, already cold, and told me to take the medicine on the counter. Don't call me unless it's an emergency, she said, and a fever isn't an emergency, Elise. When the school scheduled parent conferences, she didn't show. I told my teacher my mom worked the night shift. She didn't. She just didn't want to go. I heard her on the phone once, talking to a coworker. Being a single mom is the hardest job in the world, she said. She laughed after she said it. That easy, charming laugh. I was eating dinner alone in the kitchen when I heard it. Cereal, because there was nothing else. She knew it was hard. She just didn't want to do it. I work all week so you can eat, Elise. You could at least not make me feel guilty for wanting one night out. That was her favorite line. She used it so often I stopped counting. Keith Ballard showed up when I was 10. He sold insurance for a mid-size firm, drove a silver sedan he kept spotless, wore polo shirts on weekends and smelled like department store cologne. He wasn't mean to me. That would have been easier to explain. He just didn't see me. I was furniture, a lamp in the hallway, something Janine had to step around on her way to the life she actually wanted. Every plan he made was, we should. We should try that new Italian place. We should drive to the coast this weekend. We should book that wine tasting. We never included me, and Janine didn't correct him. Not once. The weekends changed first. Friday afternoon, Janine would start getting ready. Curling iron, nice blouse, perfume that smelled like gardenias. Keith's engine would rumble in the driveway at 6. Door would close. I'd hear the car pull away. Then nothing. Until Sunday evening. At first, she asked our neighbor, Mrs. Pritchard, 3 doors down, to check on me. A retired woman with cats and a bird feeder. She'd knock Saturday morning, ask if I needed anything, bring a muffin sometimes. But after a few months, Janine stopped asking her too. I was 10 years old, alone from Friday night to Sunday night. I learned to make ramen, to set an alarm, to lock the deadbolt twice. One evening, Janine forgot to pick me up from school. Just forgot. She and Keith were at dinner somewhere. I sat on the bench out front for 2 hours while the sky turned dark, and the security guard finally called her. She pulled up smiling, told the guard, "Oh my God, work was crazy today. I'm so sorry." In the car, silence. Not one word, not one apology. The engine hummed. Keith's cologne lingered on the passenger seat. I deserve to be happy too, Elise. Don't make me feel bad for living my life. I started writing in a journal that fall. Not because anyone told me to, because if I didn't write it down, I'd start believing none of it was real. There was one person in the world who made me feel like I existed. My grandmother, Ruth Perry. Every Sunday when I was little, before Keith, before the weekends alone, Grandma Ruth would pick me up and take me to her house. She had a small kitchen that always smelled like butter and rosemary. She'd cook while I read at the table, and sometimes she'd quiz me on vocabulary words while stirring gravy. She bought me my first journal, a purple one with a butterfly on the cover. "Write down the things that matter," she told me, "even the hard things. Especially the hard things." But Janine and Ruth did not get along. It started the year I turned 9. Ruth pulled Janine aside after a Sunday lunch and said quietly but clearly, "Janine, you're not taking care of that girl the way she needs." That was the end. Janine drove us home in silence. By the following week, Ruth's number had been deleted from the house phone. When I asked for Grandma's address, Ruth had sold her old house and moved to a smaller place. Janine said, "Your grandma doesn't want to see you anymore, Elise. She told me that herself." I was 9. I believed my mother. It wasn't true. None of it. Ruth had tried. She drove to our house 3 times that year and knocked on the door. Janine didn't answer. Ruth sent birthday cards every single year. Janine intercepted them all. I found this out much later, and when I did, something inside me cracked in a place I didn't know I'd been holding together. 3 knocks on our door. I can picture it. The doorbell ringing once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. Ruth standing on the porch with a card in her hand, waiting for a door that would never open. "Your grandma is toxic, Elise. She wants to control everything. That's why I had to cut her off. For us. For us." She always said us when she meant herself. "The last piece you need before I take you into that summer is the lock Janine put on my silence." I was 10. My teacher that year, Mrs. Goodwin, had noticed something. I brought the same lunch every day. A peanut butter sandwich on white bread. Nothing else. One afternoon she asked gently, "Elise, does your mom pack your lunch, or do you make it yourself?" I almost told her the truth. Almost. But I caught myself and said my mom was just really busy. Mrs. Goodwin nodded. Let it go. That night I made the mistake of mentioning it, just casually. "My teacher asked about my lunches today." Janine's face changed. Not angry. Scared. The kind of scared that has nothing to do with your child and everything to do with yourself. She sat me down at the kitchen table, grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to hold. "If you ever tell anyone what happens in this house, they will take you away. Do you understand? You will go to a group home. No birthday, no Christmas. No one will want you. Is that what you want, Elise? I shook my head. Good. Then we keep our business in this house. That's what families do. That was the lock, and I carried it in my chest for years. 2 months later, Janine came home glowing. She and Keith had booked a trip. 4 weeks in Europe, Paris, Rome, Barcelona. She showed me the itinerary on her phone like she was showing me a report card. I said, "What about me?" She barely looked up. "You'll be fine. You're practically a teenager." She didn't call Grandma Ruth. Didn't ask Mrs. Pritchard. Didn't arrange anyone. June 3rd. A Tuesday morning. Janine zipped 2 red suitcases, left a $20 bill on the kitchen counter next to a debit card I didn't have the PIN for, and walked toward the front door. She didn't hug me. She didn't look back. "There's food in the freezer. Don't answer the door for strangers. And Elise, don't be dramatic." The sound of those suitcase wheels rolling across the tile. Then the door. Then the car engine. Then nothing. 31 days of nothing. I stood at the window and watched her car turn the corner. I waited for brake lights. For the car to stop. For her to realize what she was doing and come back. The street went empty. I turned around. The house had a sound I'd never noticed before. The hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the wall clock. And underneath all of it, a kind of silence that presses against your ears. The silence of a place with no one else in it. I opened the fridge, half a carton of milk, a few slices of processed cheese still in the plastic, a squeezed bottle of mustard, 1 packet of ramen on the shelf above the stove. In the freezer, 3 boxes of store-brand pizza, the kind that costs $1.99 each. I sat down at the kitchen table and counted. $20. The dollar store 6 blocks away sold ramen in packs of 4 for $1. Peanut butter, $1.50. Bread, $1. If I ate 1 meal a day, I could stretch the cash to maybe 10 days. That left 21 days with no plan. I didn't write in my journal that first night. I just lay in bed and listened to the house breathe. Day 2, I walked to the grocery store on the corner. A real one, not the dollar store, and tried the debit card. The machine asked for a PIN. I guessed Janine's birthday. Wrong. I tried the year I was born. Wrong. I tried 1, 2, 3, 4. Wrong. The screen locked me out. The cashier gave me a look that still lives somewhere in my stomach. I walked home with nothing. Day 3, I opened my journal. Day 3. I ate cereal without milk. The milk went bad. I poured it down the sink, and the smell made me gag. Mom didn't call. She didn't call on day 1 either. I checked the phone twice. No signal. The phone doesn't work. I wrote because if I didn't write, I would cry. And if I started crying, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop. I wasn't scared yet. Not the real kind. That came on day 7. Day 5. I knocked on Mrs. Pritchard's door. 3 knocks. Waited. 3 more. Waited. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Her blinds were drawn. I tore a page from my journal and wrote a note. "Mrs. Pritchard, this is Elise from 2 doors down. Can you please call me when you're back?" I slid it under her door and walked home. She never called. I found out later she was visiting her son in Michigan. Gone the whole month of June. My one neighbor. Gone. Day 6. I picked up the house phone. I already knew, but I did it anyway. Held it to my ear. Nothing. No dial tone. No static. Just dead plastic. I pressed it to my ear 7 times that day, like maybe the 7th time would be different. Janine hadn't paid the phone bill. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she didn't. I could have walked somewhere. The police station was maybe 12 blocks away. I knew where it was. I'd passed it on the school bus. I put my shoes on. I stood at the front door with my hand on the knob, and I heard her voice. "They will take you away. Group home. No birthday, no Christmas. No one will want you." I took my shoes off, sat on the floor, stayed there until the light through the curtains turned orange. That night I opened the laptop. Janine's old desktop computer that she'd left because it was too heavy to take. The Wi-Fi was dead, but sometimes, if I sat near the back wall of the kitchen, a faint signal leaked in from a neighbor's unsecured network, enough to load one page if I waited long enough. I checked Janine's bank account, the joint one, the one my name was technically on, the one the locked debit card was connected to. Balance: $0. She'd withdrawn the last $40 before she left. Day 7. I'm scared, but I can't tell anyone because then everything will get worse. I have $11 left. $11. 24 days to go. By day 9, I could feel my body starting to argue with me. Not hunger the way you think about it. Not the "I skipped lunch" kind. The kind that sits low in your stomach and hums. A constant, low-frequency ache. I was eating once a day. A peanut butter sandwich if I had bread. Plain ramen if I didn't. The 3 frozen pizzas had been gone since day 6. On day 10, I walked to the dollar store. I had $7 and change left. I needed ramen, bread, maybe another jar of peanut butter if I could swing it. I was doing the math in my head when I passed the display rack near the registers. Disposable cameras. $3.99. I don't know why I picked one up. That's not true. I do know. I knew exactly why. Because when Janine came home, she would say I was lying. She would say I was being dramatic. She would roll her eyes and tell me there was food in the house the whole time. I'd watched her do it my entire life. Reshape the story until what actually happened stopped being real. Not this time. I bought the camera. I went home. I opened the refrigerator and took a photograph. Bare shelves. 1 light bulb. A ketchup packet from a fast food restaurant that I'd walked to 3 days earlier and spent $1.07 on a small fries. I photographed the bank statement on the computer screen. $0. I photographed the calendar hanging next to the stove. Each day crossed off in pencil. I photographed the note I'd left under Mrs. Pritchard's door, still visible through the gap. Day 12. The power went out. No warning. Just darkness. The hum of the refrigerator stopped, and the house went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Janine hadn't paid the electric bill either. I found a box of birthday candles in the junk drawer. 12 left from my 10th birthday. The only birthday she'd bothered with a cake. I lit one. Sat at the kitchen table with my journal. The candle made my shadow huge on the wall. Then I remembered the computer had a webcam, and the UPS battery backup still had a charge. I opened the laptop. Hit record. I didn't plan what to say. I just talked. Day 12. It's dark. The lights went out. I'm talking to the camera because there's no one else. The file saved to the hard drive. I didn't know what it was worth. I just didn't want to be alone in the dark without a voice, even if it was my own. 4 birthday candles left. I discovered the church on day 13. 4 blocks south, past the laundromat and the auto parts store. A brick building with a hand-painted sign that read, "Community Meal, Saturdays 11 a.m." I'd walked by it 100 times on school days and never once paid attention. I showed up that Saturday at 10:50, stood at the end of a line that stretched along the sidewalk. Nobody asked my name. Nobody asked why an 11-year-old was standing in a food line alone. I was tall for my age. Maybe they assumed I was 13, 14. Maybe they just didn't want to make it worse by asking. A woman in a green apron handed me a paper bag. Bread, 2 cans of soup, an apple. She smiled at me. A real one. Not Janine's smile. I almost cried right there on the sidewalk. I held it together by biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Saturday. Got bread, canned soup, and an apple. The lady at the church smiled at me. I almost cried. 2 days later, the neighbor's Wi-Fi signal drifted through again. I sat on the kitchen floor with the laptop and waited for Janine's social media page to load. It took 4 minutes. And there she was. Rome. Golden light. Janine in a sundress, holding a gelato cone, laughing at something Keith said. The Colosseum behind them, out of focus but unmistakable. Her caption, "Living my best life. #Eurotrip. #blessed." The next photo, A restaurant patio, white tablecloth, wine glasses. Caption: Missing my baby girl back home. Can't wait to bring her souvenirs. Missing me. She missed me so much she posted about it instead of calling. So much she didn't leave a working phone number. So much she drained the bank account before she left. I didn't cry, I took a screenshot. Day 17. Mom posted pictures. She wrote, blessed. I ate canned soup in the dark. 11 days left. She was coming back. And everything she'd built, the image, the story, the version of herself that other people believed, was going to collapse. But not because of me, because of my 6th grade teacher. The school district ran a summer enrichment program for 2 weeks at the end of June. I didn't sign up because I wanted to learn. I signed up because they served lunch. Day 25. First day of the program. I put on the cleanest clothes I had, a t-shirt that hung looser than it used to, and jeans I'd been tightening with a hair tie through the belt loop. I walked to school the way I'd walked everywhere that month. One foot, then the other, slow enough to save energy. It was 91 degrees that day, the kind of heat that sits on your chest. We were outside for physical education. The teacher had us running laps. I made it halfway around the track before my vision went white at the edges. The ground tilted. My knees gave out. I don't remember hitting the grass. When I opened my eyes, I was in the nurse's office. Cool cloth on my forehead, a box of crackers on the table, a juice box already opened, straw already in, and a woman sitting in the chair beside me, watching me the way no one had watched me in a very long time. Mrs. Helen Whitfield, 6th grade English. She had reading glasses pushed up on her head and a lanyard full of keys around her neck. She didn't look scared. She looked focused. The kind of focus that means someone is paying attention for real. Elise, how long have you been eating like this? I reached for the crackers instead of answering. She waited. Then, quieter. Elise, who's taking care of you this summer? Janine's voice. Group home. No one will want you. I looked down. Mrs. Whitfield leaned forward. Not crowding me. Just closer. Elise, you don't have to protect anyone right now. Just tell me the truth. I held the juice box with both hands. They were shaking. The straw rattled against the foil. My mom is in Europe. She's been gone for 25 days. Mrs. Whitfield stopped breathing. 3 full seconds. I know because I counted. Then she put her hand on my shoulder, light, steady, and said, You did the right thing, honey. I'm going to help you now. She stood up. She walked to the phone on the wall. She dialed. But she didn't call my mother. She called CPS. They came the next morning. Donna Chase was a caseworker with the county's Department of Children and Family Services. Mid-40s, short brown hair, a navy blazer over a white blouse that she wore like a uniform. She carried a clipboard and a canvas bag, and she knocked on my front door at 9:15, with Mrs. Whitfield standing one step behind her. I opened the door. The house behind me said everything I couldn't. No lights. The power was still off. The air inside was stale and warm. The kind of thick that clings to your skin when a house hasn't been properly opened in weeks. The kitchen counter had 3 empty cans of soup lined up next to the sink. The trash hadn't been taken out because I couldn't reach the dumpster lid in the alley. Donna Chase didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Oh my God." She just walked through the house slowly, the way someone does when they're reading a room the way you read a page. She opened the refrigerator. She looked at the calendar. She noted the crossed-off days. 26 X marks in pencil. Then she turned to me. Elise, do you have any records? Anything you wrote down or saved? I went to my bedroom and came back with the journal, the floral one, faded pink and yellow. I handed it to her. Donna opened it, read the first line, turned the page, read the next. She didn't speak for a long time. She just kept turning pages, each one dated, each one written in careful pencil by a child who had no one to talk to except a notebook. When she looked up, her eyes were red. I showed her the disposable camera. 22 exposures. I showed her the folder on the laptop. The webcam recordings. Day 12 in the dark. Day 15. Quieter. Day 20. Barely whispering. Donna took photos of every page. Click, click, click. The sound of the shutter was the loudest thing in that house in weeks. She turned to Mrs. Whitfield. Her voice was low, but I heard it. This is one of the most documented cases I've ever seen from a child this age, and she didn't even know she was building a case. Then she knelt in front of me, eye level. Elise, you are not in trouble. You haven't done anything wrong. I need you to understand that. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. We're going to find your grandmother. Donna Chase made 3 phone calls that afternoon. It took less than an hour to find Ruth Perry. She lived 45 minutes away. Same county. A 2-bedroom rental near a community garden. She'd been there for 3 years, ever since Janine cut her off, and she'd never stopped trying to reach me. Donna confirmed it. Letters sent, cards returned, visits unanswered. Janine had built a wall between me and the one person who actually cared, and she'd told me it was the other way around. Day 27, 4 days before Janine's flight home. I was sitting on the front steps when the car pulled up. A blue sedan. Older model. Clean. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. Silver hair in a low braid, glasses on a chain around her neck. Sneakers, jeans, a cardigan that looked like she'd been wearing it since I was small. She saw me. She stopped moving. 1 foot on the curb, 1 still in the street. Her hand came up to her mouth and stayed there. I was thinner. She could see that from the driveway. My collarbones showed through my t-shirt. My shorts hung low on my hips. She walked to me slowly like she was afraid I might disappear. Then she held me, and I smelled it. Butter and rosemary. The same as when I was 6, 7, 8. Sunday mornings in her kitchen, vocabulary words over gravy. A smell I thought I'd never get back. I'm here, she said. I'm not leaving. She signed the emergency guardianship forms that afternoon. I packed a backpack, journal, camera, the USB drive I'd copied the webcam files onto, and 2 changes of clothes. That was everything I owned that mattered. In the car, Ruth opened the trunk. Inside, a gift bag with tissue paper. She set it in my lap. I've been keeping your birthday presents, every year. I kept hoping. Inside the bag, 5 birthday cards. 1 for every year since I'd turned 9. Each one signed in blue ink, each one with the same line. I love you, Elise. I'm still here. 5 cards Janine had never let me see. That first night at Ruth's house, I slept 9 hours straight. I hadn't done that in 30 days. She made scrambled eggs in the morning, set a glass of orange juice next to my plate without asking if I wanted it, sat across from me and said nothing while I ate. She didn't need to talk. She just needed to be there. And she was. But the clock was ticking. Donna Chase came by that afternoon. She sat with Ruth at the kitchen table and I stayed in the next room. The door was open, and I wasn't trying to hide the fact that I was listening. Donna didn't seem to mind. The file has been opened, Donna said. Child neglect, substantiated. When Ms. Holt returns to the country, she'll be contacted by our office. We've coordinated with local police. No one's going to meet her at the airport. That's not how we do this. But when she arrives at the house, there will be someone there. Ruth nodded. Her jaw was tight. What happens to Elise? You have temporary emergency custody. That holds until the family court hearing. Given what we've documented, I expect the court to formalize something longer term. I sat on the floor of the hallway, knees pulled to my chest. I could hear everything. And inside me, 2 things were fighting. Part of me wanted it. Wanted someone to look at what she'd done and say it out loud. Wanted a judge, a file, a record, proof that I wasn't dramatic. That this was real. That it mattered. And part of me, the part that still called her mom in my head, was terrified. Because once this happened, there was no pretending anymore. No going back to the version of us where she was just a tired single mom, and I was just a quiet kid. Have you ever wanted justice and been scared of it at the same time? Wanted someone to be held accountable but also wished you didn't have to be the reason it happened? If you know that feeling, tell me in the comments. Because at 11 years old, I didn't have a name for it. I just knew my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 days. In 3 days, she would walk through that door expecting everything to be exactly as she left it. July 4th, Independence Day. You can't make this stuff up. Janine's flight landed at 4:17 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because Donna Chase called Ruth to confirm. I was sitting on the porch steps at Ruth's house, watching the neighbor kids set up sparklers in their driveway. I could smell hot dogs grilling 2 houses down. Somewhere down the block, someone set off a bottle rocket and a dog barked. Inside, the phone rang once. Ruth picked it up. I heard her say, "Understood. Thank you." She came to the screen door. "Donna says they're in position. Elise, you stay here with me." I nodded. I wasn't there when it happened. Everything I'm about to tell you, I learned from Donna Chase's report and from Ruth, who spoke with Donna that same evening. But I've imagined it so many times that it plays in my head like a movie I can't turn off. Janine and Keith took a cab from the airport. 2 suitcases each. Designer stuff. Matching luggage sets they'd bought in Barcelona. Janine's skin was tan. She had new sunglasses pushed up on her head. She was laughing about something when the cab pulled up to the house. Keith pulled the bags out of the trunk. Janine walked up the driveway, keys already in her hand. She might have noticed the unmarked sedan parked 2 houses down. She might not have. She unlocked the front door, stepped inside, called out like she always did when she came home from work and expected me to be waiting. "Elise, I'm home." The house answered with the same silence I'd been living in for 31 days. She kept walking. She turned the corner into the kitchen, and she stopped. Donna Chase was sitting at the kitchen table. Not standing. Sitting. Calm. Hands folded on a manila folder. Beside her, the journal. My journal. Open to a page near the middle. Next to it, a row of photographs laid out in order. The refrigerator. The calendar. The bank statement at $0. A still frame from the webcam. Me, sitting in the dark, lit by the glow of a laptop screen, ribs visible through my shirt. A uniformed officer stood near the back door, quiet, arms at his sides. Donna looked up. "Ms. Holt, please come in." Janine didn't move. I imagine this is the moment her brain tried to rewrite the scene. Tried to find the version where this made sense, where she was still the protagonist, where there was an explanation that ended with her being right. She couldn't find one. 3 seconds of absolute silence. No one breathed. The only sound in that kitchen was the hum of the refrigerator, the same one I'd listened to for 31 nights. Donna had called the electric company 2 days earlier to restore the power. The house was lit. Every detail visible. Janine's suitcase hit the floor. The handle clattered against the tile. No, this can't be happening." Donna's voice didn't change. Flat. Professional. The kind of calm that sounds louder than shouting. "Ma'am, please sit down. We have some questions." Behind Janine, Keith appeared in the hallway. He saw the officer. He saw the photographs on the table. He took 1 step backward. "Where is she?" Janine's voice cracked, but it wasn't worry. I know what her worry sounds like. I'd never heard it directed at me. This was the sound of someone realizing the audience had changed. "Where is my daughter?" Donna Chase didn't blink. "Your daughter is safe, Ms. Holt. She's been safe for about 48 hours now, the first time in a month." Janine sat down. And then she did what she had done her entire life. She started performing. The tears came fast, 3 seconds flat, perfectly timed. She pressed her fingertips under her eyes like she was protecting mascara that didn't need protecting. "There's been a misunderstanding. I arranged for my neighbor to check on her. Mrs. Pritchard. She was supposed to come by every day. I don't know what—" "Mrs. Pritchard was out of state the entire month of June," Donna said. "We confirmed with her directly. She had no knowledge of any arrangement." Janine shifted. The tears kept coming, but her eyes were scanning. Donna's face. The officer. The photographs. Calculating. "Elise has a tendency to exaggerate. She's always been sensitive. She probably just didn't answer the door when... Donna picked up one of the photographs. The refrigerator. Bare shelves. Light bulb. Ketchup packet. Is this exaggerated, Ms. Holt? Janine looked at it. Looked away. I'm a single mother. Her voice rose. Do you have any idea how hard it is? I work 50 hours a week. I needed a break. One break. Every parent. The officer spoke for the first time. Quiet, but the kind of quiet that fills a room. Ma'am, you left a minor child unattended for 31 days with $20 and no working phone. That is not a break. Janine's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then Donna did something that I think about to this day. She turned the laptop on the table around. She pressed play on a file. My voice. 11 years old. In the dark. Day 12. It's dark. The lights went out. I'm talking to the camera because there's no one else. The video played for 41 seconds. My face lit by the screen. My ribs through my shirt. The birthday candle melted to a stub on the table behind me. Janine turned her face away. She didn't say, I'm sorry. She didn't say, oh my God. She turned away from the screen the way you turn away from something you don't want to see, not because it's painful, but because it's proof. Ms. Holt, I want to make sure you understand, Donna said. We are not here because Elise reported you. We're here because her teacher saw a child who was starving. What happened next was procedural, methodical. The kind of quiet devastation that arrives on official letterhead. Donna Chase informed Janine that the Department of Children and Family Services had opened a formal case. The finding, child neglect, substantiated. Her name would be entered into the state central registry. A permanent record accessible by any employer in healthcare, education, childcare, elder care, or any field involving vulnerable populations. A family court hearing would be scheduled within 14 days. Temporary emergency custody of Elise Monroe had already been transferred to Ruth Perry, maternal grandmother. You can't do this, Janine said. Her voice was small now, deflated. She's my daughter. The court will determine that, ma'am. Keith stood in the hallway the entire time. He hadn't sat down, hadn't spoken since they'd arrived. Now Donna turned to him. Mr. Ballard, your name appears in our records as a cohabitating adult who was aware of the child's living situation and participated in the trip abroad. We'll need a statement from you as well. Keith's face went gray. I didn't know. I thought she had arrangements. I thought someone was... You purchased both plane tickets, Mr. Ballard. Your credit card. We have the transaction records. Keith looked at Janine. Not with love. Not with anger. With the cold, calculating look of a man measuring the distance between himself and the nearest exit. Keith? Janine's voice had that edge. The one I recognized from childhood. The one that meant, stand by me or else. Keith said nothing. He looked at the floor. And in that silence, something between them broke. Not dramatically. Not with a fight. It just cracked. Quietly. The way ice cracks on a pond before it gives way. He hired his own lawyer the following week. Separate representation. He wanted his name off her file. The relationship was over. Not ended by a breakup, but by a liability assessment. Donna placed a single sheet of paper on the kitchen table. The hearing notice. The sound it made when it touched the wood was almost nothing, a whisper of paper against oak. But to Janine, it might as well have been a gavel. I gave her everything, Janine said. To no one, to the room, everything. And this is what I get. The family court hearing took place on a Wednesday morning in a building that smelled like floor wax and coffee that had been sitting too long. I wore a blue polo shirt that Ruth had bought me the week before. She'd ironed it that morning. I remember watching the steam rise off the collar while she pressed it. Careful, precise. The way someone prepares you for a thing that matters. She drove us downtown without the radio on. Neither of us talked. There wasn't much to say that the next 2 hours wouldn't say for us. Janine was already seated when we walked in. She had a lawyer, a man in a gray suit that Keith had apparently paid for before cutting contact. Janine's hair was pulled back. She was wearing lipstick. Even here, even now, she was performing for an audience. The county attorney representing CPS was a woman named Sandra Webb, mid-50s, glasses on a chain. She spoke the way Donna Chase wrote reports. Clean, factual, without decoration. She read from my journal. Day 1. Mom left. $20. The room was still. Day 7. I'm scared, but I can't tell anyone because then everything will get worse. I looked at my hands. Day 12. No lights. I found birthday candles in the junk drawer. I have 4 left. Someone in the gallery shifted in their seat. That was the only sound. Day 25. I fainted today. A teacher helped me. She was the first person to ask if I was okay. Sandra set the journal down. The courtroom had the particular silence of a room full of people who are each privately imagining a child alone in the dark with a birthday candle. Judge Margaret Haynes looked at Janine over the rim of her glasses. Ms. Holt, do you dispute any of the entries in this journal? Janine's lawyer leaned in, whispered something. Janine straightened. No, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Then, Ms. Holt, where is the debit card you left for your daughter? It was in her name. She had access. The card was locked, Ms. Holt. The PIN was never provided to the child. Were you aware of that? Janine opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The clock on the wall ticked 5 times before the judge spoke again. I've been on this bench for 19 years, Judge Haynes said. This journal is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence I have ever received from a minor. She paused. Not for drama, for weight. The court finds as follows. Full legal custody of Elise Monroe, minor child, was transferred to Ruth Perry effective immediately. Janine Holt's parental rights were not terminated. That's a different process. But her custodial rights were stripped. She would be permitted supervised visitation, twice monthly, only if Elise consented. The finding of substantiated child neglect would remain in the state central registry, permanently. Any employer conducting a background check in healthcare, education, social services, elder care, or child care would see it. There was no expiration date. Keith Ballard, listed as a knowledgeable cohabitating adult, received a separate finding: failure to report suspected neglect of a minor. Prohibited from unsupervised contact with any non-biological minor child. Janine sat at the defendant's table. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. She was crying. Real tears this time. I could tell the difference because I'd spent 11 years studying the fake ones. These were the tears of someone watching something slip away. But the thing she was mourning wasn't me. It was control. The ability to shape the story. That's what broke her. When we walked out of the courtroom, Janine was in the hallway. Ruth held my hand and kept walking, eyes forward, but Janine stepped into our path. She looked at me, and for a moment I thought, maybe now, maybe the words, I hope you're happy now. That was it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, are you okay? Not, I failed you. I hope you're happy now. She walked past me and I caught a trace of her perfume. Something expensive. Something new. Bought on a trip paid for with money that should have fed me. Ruth squeezed my hand once. Hard. We kept walking. Ruth's house was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window over the sink that faced a row of tomato plants she'd been tending for years. Nothing about it was fancy. Everything about it was real. The first morning, I woke up to the sound of eggs cracking into a pan. I came into the kitchen and there was a plate, toast, eggs, a glass of juice. Ruth was already sitting across the table reading the newspaper, like this was just a regular Tuesday. Like I'd been there all along. How was your day? She asked every single evening. Sometimes I said fine, sometimes I said bad. She listened either way. She never once told me I was being dramatic. The years after that moved the way years do when they're not being survived. They just passed. 7th grade, 9th grade. I started making friends. Real ones. I joined the school's creative writing club because a teacher told me I was good with words. By sophomore year, I was submitting short stories to the school magazine. By senior year, I won an essay contest. Ruth taped the certificate to her refrigerator. It was still there last Thanksgiving. She wasn't rich. Her pension from 26 years as a postal worker covered the bills and not much else. But there was always food in the fridge. The lights always worked. And every single birthday, there was cake. I turned 18, graduated, got a job, started community college at night, moved into my own place at 20. It was a studio the size of Ruth's kitchen, but the lease was in my name and the door locked from the inside. Janine never called, never wrote, never showed up for a single supervised visit. I used to wonder if that meant she didn't love me. Eventually, I realized it meant the same thing it always had. I was only useful to her when I served a purpose. At 22, I got the job at the pediatric clinic, filed charts, answered phones, helped nervous parents check in their kids. I hadn't opened the journal in years. It sat in my desk drawer, quiet, the way a fire alarm sits on the wall. You don't think about it until you need it. Then, on a Thursday in October, Janine was standing next to my car, and I understood. The alarm was about to go off again. I thought she'd take the hint. After I walked out of that coffee shop without a word, I thought, that's it. 13 years of nothing, and now she'll go back to nothing. Janine had always been efficient about cutting people off. I'd watched her do it to Ruth, to friends, to coworkers. I assumed she'd extend me the same courtesy. She didn't. Day 1 after the coffee shop, a text from a number I didn't recognize. I just want to talk. Please, Elise, that's all I'm asking. Day 3. You can't ignore me forever. I am your mother. Day 5. She called Ruth. Ruth told me about it that evening, her voice the particular kind of flat it gets when she's angry but choosing not to yell. Janine had cried on the phone, told Ruth that I was being cruel, ungrateful, that all she wanted was a chance to make things right, and her own daughter wouldn't even speak to her. Ruth listened. Then she said, Janine, you had 11 years of chances. I'm hanging up now. She hung up. But on day 7, Janine found another angle. She tracked down one of my coworkers on Facebook, a girl named Dana from the front desk, and sent her a private message. Please tell my daughter to call me. I'm her mother, and she won't speak to me. I don't know what I did wrong. Dana showed me the screenshot on her lunch break. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't respond to it, but I thought you should see this. I stared at the message. The words "I don't know what I did wrong" sat in my chest like a splinter. Part of me, the old part, the 11-year-old part, whispered, just sign the paper. Give her what she wants. It's easier. You're fine now. It doesn't matter anymore. But I went home that night and opened the drawer. I took out the journal. Turned to day 12. No lights. I found birthday candles in the junk drawer. I have 4 left. It still mattered. I've changed, Elise. Her last text read. But you won't even give me a chance. What does that say about you? It said I finally learned what she spent 11 years trying to beat out of me, that I was allowed to say no. I called the legal aid clinic at my old community college on a Monday morning. I knew about the clinic because I'd walked past their office every semester for 2 years, free consultations for students and alumni. I'd never needed them before. Now I did. The attorney who took my case was named Paul Beckett. Late 30s, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of guy who drinks his coffee black and keeps a pen behind his ear. He listened to everything, the texts, the Facebook message, the coffee shop ambush. He asked calm, precise questions. He didn't look surprised. We can send a cease and desist letter, he said. It's not a court order, but it puts her on formal notice. If she contacts you again, directly or through a third party, or shows up at your workplace, we file for a restraining order. That one has teeth. He drafted it that afternoon. I read it twice, signed it once. The letter was addressed to Janine Marie Holt. Not Mom, not Janine. Her full legal name, printed on a letterhead with the legal clinic's address, citing specific dates, specific incidents, specific statutes. At the bottom, I asked Paul to include a paragraph. It wasn't required. It wasn't legal language, but I needed to say it. I will not sign any document to expunge your record. That record exists because of choices you made. I was 11. I did not choose to be left alone. I will not choose to erase the truth now. Paul raised an eyebrow when he read it. Then he nodded. I'll include it. The letter went out via certified mail. Return receipt requested. Paul also told me something that landed like a stone in still water. Even if I had signed Janine's form, the expungement almost certainly would have been denied. A substantiated finding in the state central registry requires significant new evidence to overturn, not just a victim's letter. Janine had told me, just sign and it goes away. It wouldn't have. She was manipulating me. Again. One more performance. One more script she needed me to follow. The printer hummed. The pen scratched paper. The envelope sealed shut. I didn't write that letter to hurt her. I wrote it so she would know. The little girl who was afraid of group homes doesn't live here anymore. 5 days after the letter was mailed, Janine came to my workplace. Monday, 9 in the morning. I was at the reception desk entering patient records. The waiting room was half full, a mother bouncing a toddler on her knee, an elderly man flipping through a magazine, a teenager with earbuds and a splinted wrist. The front door opened. Cool air from outside. Janine, different from the parking lot. Thinner. Hair messier. Eyes rimmed red. But that could have been real or rehearsed. She wore a wrinkled coat and sneakers that didn't match her purse. She looked like someone losing a fight with her own life and blaming the referee. We need to talk. Right now. I'm not leaving until you listen to me. The toddler's mother looked up. The teenager took one earbud out. I stood. Here's what I did not do. I did not shout. I did not cry. I did not apologize. I did not reach for the phone. I spoke at the same volume I use when I tell a parent their child's appointment has been moved to Tuesday. Janine, you were sent a cease and desist letter 5 days ago. You are at my workplace. I'm going to ask you one time to leave. Don't call me Janine. I am your mother. I looked at her. Directly. The way I couldn't when I was 11. The way I'd spent 13 years learning how to. A mother does not leave her 11-year-old alone for a month with $20 and no phone. You lost that title in a courtroom 13 years ago. The waiting room went silent. The mother holding the toddler pulled her child closer against her chest. The old man lowered his magazine. The teenager stared. Nobody moved. Janine stood in the center of that silence with her mouth open and nothing coming out. My office manager, Linda, appeared from the back hallway. She'd heard everything. She positioned herself between Janine and the reception desk, arms crossed. Ma'am, I need you to leave, now, or I'm calling the police. Janine looked around the room, every face, looking for someone who would take her side. The mother, the old man, the teenager. Nobody moved. She turned, walked out. The glass door closed behind her with a soft pneumatic hiss. I sat down. My hands were steady. My heart was not. But I didn't need it to be. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth is already loud enough when you stop whispering it. Linda called the police non-emergency line before Janine's car left the parking lot. It wasn't dramatic. No sirens, no handcuffs. An officer came by 40 minutes later, took my statement, accepted the copy of the cease and desist I kept in my work bag, and wrote it up. Violation of a cease and desist notice. Documented. Forwarded to the county attorney's office. The officer, a woman about my age, short hair, steady eyes, explained it plainly. If she contacts you again in any form, in person, by phone, through a third party, you can petition for a restraining order. At that point, any further contact becomes a criminal matter. I signed the incident report. She tore off my copy. The paper was thin, the kind that smudges if you press too hard. Dana brought me a cup of water after the officer left. She sat in the chair next to my desk and said nothing. Just sat there. Sometimes the best thing a person can do is be present without needing to fix anything. I called Ruth on my lunch break. Sat in my car in the parking lot with the engine off. "It's over, Grandma." A pause. Then Ruth's voice, warm and certain, the way it always was when things that needed to happen had finally happened. "Good. Come home for dinner tonight. I'm making your favorite." I have thought many times about what it would have been like if no one had ever seen me. If Mrs. Whitfield hadn't knelt next to me in that nurse's office. If Donna Chase hadn't turned to the right page. If Ruth hadn't picked up the phone. At what point does a person stop being invisible? I used to think it was when someone finally looks at you, but I think now it's when you stop hiding. When you stand up at a reception desk and say a true sentence out loud and don't apologize for it. I was 24 years old, and for the first time, I wasn't performing invisibility. I was done. Let me tell you what happened to Janine. Not because it brings me joy, but because consequences are the only language some people hear. The job at the assisted living facility, the reason she'd come back after 13 years, was gone. The state central registry finding meant she couldn't pass a background check for any position involving vulnerable populations. Not healthcare, not education, not childcare, not elder care. The thing that sent her looking for me was the thing she could never undo, because I wasn't the one who put it there. A judge did, based on evidence. Evidence I didn't even know I was creating. The cease and desist violation was on file with the county. One more incident and I had grounds for a restraining order, which would create an additional legal record. Another flag on another background check, another door closing behind her. Keith Ballard. Gone. He'd disappeared into another state the week after the original hearing, 13 years ago. Hired his own attorney, separated his name from Janine's wherever he could. Their relationship didn't end with a fight. It ended with a billable hour. The social media accounts, the ones with the hashtags and the blessed selfies and the missing my baby girl captions, were deleted. Dana had mentioned the Facebook message to a few people at the clinic. They mentioned it to a few people outside the clinic. In a small town, information moves at the speed of gossip. The image Janine had spent decades constructing, devoted mother, self-sacrificing single parent, was gone. And she couldn't spin it anymore because there was a paper trail, from hashtag living my best life in Paris to a borrowed room in a friend's apartment, unable to get hired. Not because I attacked her, not because I exposed her, because I stepped to the side and let the consequences she'd been outrunning for 13 years finally catch up. I didn't destroy her life. She made her choices 13 years ago. I just stopped standing between her and the results. 3 weeks of silence. I had started to believe it was finally over. Then Ruth called me on a Tuesday evening. "A letter came for you." She sent it to my address. Not directly to me, through Ruth. Technically not a violation. Janine had always been precise about the edges of rules she was willing to bend. I drove to Ruth's that night. The envelope was on the kitchen table. Handwritten. My name in loopy cursive. I opened it standing up. "Dear Elise, I know I made mistakes. I know I wasn't perfect, but I am still your mother and I always will be. I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. I've changed. All I want is for us to be a family again. Mom, P.S. If you could reconsider the letter about my record, I would really appreciate it. I just need a fresh start." I read it twice. She wrote, "I made mistakes." Plural. Vague. The way you describe getting a parking ticket or forgetting to return a library book. Not the way you describe leaving your child alone for 31 days in a house with no power, no phone, and no food. She wrote, "I wasn't perfect." As if the gap between perfect and criminal was a rounding error. And then, the P.S. The real purpose, the part the apology was packaging for. One more request. One more form. One more time she needed me to perform a function. She signed it in lipstick. I'm not making that up. Not ink. Not pen. Lipstick. The same way she signed postcards to friends from vacation. Even her apology was a performance. I didn't reply. Didn't tear it up. Didn't burn it. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the desk drawer, next to the journal. next to the USB drive, next to the birthday cards Ruth had saved for 5 years. If she ever came back again, I'd have one more piece of evidence I didn't ask for and she handed me voluntarily. The drawer closed with a quiet click. The same drawer, the same journal, but a different girl deciding what to keep. It's morning as I tell you this, a Saturday in October. I'm sitting in my studio apartment with a cup of coffee that's almost too hot to hold. I just opened the refrigerator. Full. Milk, eggs, spinach, leftover pasta from Thursday, a container of soup. Ruth dropped off last Sunday. 2 apples, a block of cheese. You don't understand what a full refrigerator means until you've opened one at 2 in the morning and found nothing but a light bulb and a ketchup packet. Now, every time I open that door and see food, something in my chest releases, a muscle I've been clenching since I was 11. I don't hate Janine. Hate takes maintenance I'm not willing to provide. I just don't make room for her anymore. Not in my house, not in my head, not in the refrigerator. Ruth and I have dinner every Sunday. She's 72 and still tends her tomato garden. She still asks, "How was your day?" every time I call. She still tapes things to her refrigerator. Last month it was a thank you card I gave her. No reason. Just because. I work at the clinic. I file charts. I help parents check in their kids. Sometimes a mother walks in looking overwhelmed and tired and scared, and I give her a warm smile and say, "Take your time. We're in no rush." Because I know what it looks like when a child is watching to see if the adults around them are paying attention. Ruth once told me, "Boundaries aren't walls you build to keep people out. They're doors where you hold the key." I think about that a lot. If you're listening to this and it feels familiar, if you were the child in the dark house, or if you're the adult still afraid of being called selfish for saying no, I want to tell you something. It's the same thing Mrs. Whitfield told me the day she knelt beside me in a nurse's office with a juice box and a question I'd been waiting my entire life for someone to ask. You don't have to protect anyone right now. Just tell the truth. My refrigerator is full. My phone works. My door has a lock that only I control. I am 24 years old and I am finally, completely, home. That's my story. I didn't tell it for pity. I told it because silence is what people like Janine count on. And I'm done being quiet. If this reached you, hit like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you've ever had to draw a boundary with someone who called it betrayal, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. There's another story waiting for you in the description, about a girl whose family tried to erase her from a wedding, and what happened when she showed up anyway. I'll see you there.